Who is going to win the EFL Championship playoffs? Hello guys, how are we all doing? Welcome back to yet another video. Today, as I say, we are taking a deep dive into the top end of the Championship now that the season has come to an end and working out who's going to be going up with Leicester and Ipswich through the playoffs. Guys, before we get into today's video, do be sure to comment down below which team you think is going to go on and win the EFL Championship playoffs. I will be doing a video tomorrow with my sister Sophie predicting the first legs, and I seriously cannot wait. In today's video, we are taking a look at each of the teams that have finished in the Championship playoffs, having a look at some of the key numbers and seeing if we can work out who is actually going to go on and win the Championship playoffs. Do be sure to show this video some support as well. We'll go for 888 likes on this one. It's free to drop a like, so do take 2 seconds to hit that thumbs up button. It's also free to subscribe, so make sure to go down there and hit the subscribe button. It takes 2 seconds and you're doing me a massive favour. We will have lots of coverage for the Championship playoffs, including live streams for each and every one of the games, so make sure to get involved. With all of that said, let's have a little look at the teams involved and see if we can work out who might be going up. So then, the 46-game regular Championship season has come to an end, and as we said, fair play to Leicester City and Ipswich Town on their promotions. It's been a really competitive division, maybe one of the best Championship seasons I've seen in a long time, and we've been left with Leeds United, Southampton, West Bromwich Albion and Norwich fighting it out for the third and final promotion place going up to the Premier League. Let's have a little look at some of the teams first before we come on to some of the underlying numbers. Well, in third place we've got Leeds United, who managed to get 90 points but not get automatic promotion. Now, of course, there will be some Leeds fans that are disappointed they couldn't finish in the top two. There was a lot of expectation that they would be there. I thought they would be with Leicester City at the start of the season. So what you've got to say is fair play to Ipswich Town for finishing in there. But to get 90 points and not go up is also quite harsh, really. It doesn't happen all too often, and on the whole, I think they have been very impressive this season. They did have a slow-ish start where it took them a few games to get going, and maybe that is what has cost them this season, plus the fact they've had a poor run in the final 5 or 6 games when it was neck and neck between the top three. That is probably what's undone Leeds United, because for most of the season, in particular the first big portion of 2024, they were unstoppable. So fair play to them for finishing third. It's still a good achievement, and based on the quality and where they've finished in the table, they've got to fancy their chances of going on to win the playoffs. In fourth place we have Southampton. Now, Southampton for me have been a streaky team this season. They always seem to go on a good run or a bad run, and there doesn't seem to be any in between. Like I said, there's been spells in the season where they've won loads of games back to back to back, and it looked like they might make the top two. Then they seemed to fall out of the race for the top two and couldn't keep up with the top three teams. Then they had a late flurry where they got back involved, and then they lost 3 games in a row, and they've missed out on the top two. But to still finish fourth is still pretty decent. The question is, can Russell Martin guide them through the playoffs now, because they also have quite a bit of expectation to go on and win them. In fifth place we have West Bromwich Albion. Now, this seems to be a season where West Brom have got back on their feet somewhat. After the disappointment over the last couple seasons of not being able to get into the Championship playoffs, Carlos Corberán has guided them there reasonably comfortably so, because they did seem to be fifth for a long spell of this season. They did seem to end the season in some wobbly and shaky form, and I do still maintain that if Hull City or Coventry City had been more consistent, that West Brom could have been caught, but they got over the line, so they do deserve to be here in the playoffs, and they've got as good a chance as anyone of going on to win them. The final team in the playoffs then are Norwich City, who went on to finish in 6th place. Now, 6th place for most of the season did seem to be open to Hull City, Middlesbrough maybe, Coventry and Norwich. They were all kind of jostling over it, and it just seems that in the final few weeks of the season, Norwich City did take control of that final playoff place with their incredible home run where they won 9 or 10 home games in a row. It was honestly unbelievable. The form did fizzle out a little bit towards the end, but they did do enough to just get over the line in 6th place. So then, Leeds United, Southampton, West Bromwich Albion and Norwich City are the teams involved. But who's going to go on to get promoted? Let's have a look at some of the numbers. In terms of who's scored the most goals this season, it's Southampton. In terms of who's conceded the least goals this season, is Leeds United. In terms of who's scored the least goals, it's West Bromwich Albion, and in terms of the team that's conceded the most goals, it's Norwich City. As for the form book, it's really interesting that all four of these teams come into the playoffs not in particularly great form. Leeds United have lost 3 of their last 4 games. Southampton have lost 3 of their last 4 games. West Bromwich Albion have lost 3 of their last 4 games. And Norwich City have won 1 of their last 4 games with 2 draws and 1 defeat. So incredibly, out of 4 teams that have finished in the playoffs with just 5 points in their last 4 games, Norwich City are the form team. When it comes to the danger men, the players you need to look out for, well, Leeds United have a lot of attacking quality in their armoury. Somerville, Dan James, Joel Perreault have all chipped in with goals this season. As for Southampton, of course, they have the likes of Adam Armstrong and Che Adams. West Bromwich Albion, of course, have Thomas Asante and John Swift, who scored a few goals. And then as for Norwich City, of course, they've got Josh Sargent. They've also got Sarah and Rowe as well. So there's plenty of attacking quality in each and every one of these teams, and it does look like there could be some goals, especially if the teams come into this in not the best form. Will we get some really open games that are like basketball matches? Well, maybe. Let's have a little look at the results between these teams this season, and this is really interesting. Leeds United at home to Southampton lost on the final day. They drew at home to West Brom, and they won at home against Norwich. On the road, Leeds United lost at Southampton, lost at West Brom, and beat Norwich City. When you look at Southampton's results between these 4 teams, they're the only team not to have lost to any of these, with a 3-1 home win over Leeds, a 2-1 away win over Leeds, a 2-1 home win over West Brom, a 2-0 away win against West Brom, and a 4-4 draw at home to Norwich and a 1-1 draw away to Norwich. As for West Bromwich Albion, they've picked up 7 points against these teams that they're facing. They have beat Leeds United and Norwich at home, but they've lost to Southampton on both occasions, which could be important here, as that's the team they're taking on in the playoff semi-finals. As for Norwich City, they've only picked up 5 points from the 6 games against these teams here, beating West Brom at home and drawing with Southampton twice. They've lost both games to Leeds United this season, and that's who they're facing in the playoff semi-finals. So I think those numbers could be really crucial here in terms of the mental side of things, but they could completely go out of the window as well, because some of those games were quite a while ago. So just because Norwich have lost to Leeds twice and West Brom have lost to Southampton twice doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a guaranteed Leeds United Southampton final. Let's move on to some more interesting figures here then. In terms of the table, as we all know, it was Leeds, Southampton, West Brom and Norwich. In terms of the bookmakers, they have Leeds United as ever so slight favourites to go on and win the playoffs, followed closely by Southampton. But the bookmakers think Norwich City are more likely to get promoted than West Bromwich Albion, which I thought was quite interesting. When it came to the head-to-head records, as we said, Southampton have come out on top with 14 points collected in the 6 games against these teams, followed by Leeds United with 7 points, West Brom with 7 points but a worse goal difference, and then Norwich City with just 5 points in their 6 games against these teams. And then when it comes to the form table over the last 10 games, Norwich City have come up top here with 18 points. West Brom have picked up 15 points in their last 10, and both Southampton and Leeds have picked up 14 points in their last 10 games. Maybe the form table might balance things out here. Now, one thing I will say is I remember doing this exact same video this time last year, and it was the teams that finished 5th and 6th that had the better form, which were Coventry and Sunderland, and of course neither of them went on to win the playoffs. So maybe you take the form with a pinch of salt. Southampton maybe for the last couple of games knew that they didn't have much to play for. Leeds United were just sort of stumbling, whereas Norwich and West Brom were keen to wrap up their playoff places. So I don't know, you can measure these numbers however you like. One thing I do think we need to look at is the men in the dugout, the managers here, and I think this is really interesting because we've got quite a few connections to Norwich City and quite a few connections to Huddersfield Town. First of all, we've got Daniel Farke, the Leeds United manager. Of course, he's been promoted from this division before twice with Norwich City. One thing I will say though is he hasn't finished in the Championship playoffs before, so this will be slightly unfamiliar territory for him. He knows how to get a team promoted from this division, but it can be different in the playoffs because it is a knockout tournament, and one slip up and you're finished. As for Russell Martin, of course we know he's managed in the Championship before with Swansea City, but there's no promotions on the CV and there's no playoff campaigns in the CV, so unfamiliar territory here for Russell Martin, which could still work to his advantage. As for Carlos Corberán, of course, he's been at West Bromwich Albion for a little while now, and he did get Huddersfield Town to the playoff final back in 2022. He managed to get them to finish third in the division, and they went on to lose 1-0 to Nottingham Forest in the final. So he has playoff experience in his favour here, but it was a playoff failure. Whereas Norwich City's manager here, David Wagner, also got Huddersfield Town to the playoffs, but he managed to guide them through it and got them promoted against Reading. So Wagner is the only one out of these four managers that has got a playoff promotion on his CV in the Championship. Corberán's got a playoff loss, Farke's got promotions but no playoff experience, and Martin has got no promotions and no playoff experience. Quite an interesting blend here. Let me know what difference you think that might make. I do think it'd be really interesting if it was a Corberán-Wagner final, the two ex-Huddersfield managers that got them to finals before. I do also think it's going to be interesting to see Farke versus Norwich in the playoffs, and it would also be interesting to see Russell Martin versus Norwich in the playoff final. There's so many different narratives and so many different possibilities. My hunch right now would probably be to lean towards what the bookies are saying. Leeds and Southampton have to be favourites because they've done so well this season. And if you are someone who's watched the Championship quite a lot, then you will know that more often than not, the teams that finish third and fourth do get the job done. But honestly, I don't want to rule out Norwich or West Brom. I think it is up for grabs for all of these teams. Share your thoughts down in the comments, guys. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like. We're going for 888. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow with Sophie predicting the first legs. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.